I saw a news headline in RT, and I just read the article, but I don't know if this has been confirmed anywhere else. Is that there were Russian hackers that got the data on dead and missing Ukrainian soldiers. They had 1.7 million, and the names, and so I don't know if that's verified, but we've been talking about like it's got to be over a million from many different sources, people like Colonel Douglas McGregor, whatever. Nobody knows for sure, but often the numbers that I hear being thrown around that within the dissident community is something maybe like 120,000 Russian soldiers and over a million Ukrainian. And now if this is true, and if this leak that this hack that these Russians got of the database becomes verified, and we know that indeed let's say over 1.5 million, we'll say died. We don't know how many were missing, how many are dead, but let's just say 1.5 million. And then and then at the end of the war, we see that there was maybe around 100,000 Russians that were killed. Like, what will that do to that? Just that fact in itself, I think, will just be so damaging to NATO's reputation and just the West overall. Any ability of us telling the truth that we said that Russia was engaging in human wave cat tactics, that we said that the Ukrainians were doing great and we just got to keep on helping them a little bit more. And we were just sending them into the meat grinder, just slaughtering these boys, and then the ratio was 15-1. Every Russian that died, there were 15 Ukrainians that died. Like, that is so horrible, just so horrific, just killing all these men. And for what? Saying that somehow you're going to take down the world's largest country in terms of landmass, the take down the country that has the most nuclear weapons. This is insane. Like, I just, how will that in itself, if that fact comes out and we see that, couldn't that just destroy NATO? Shouldn't that just destroy the West narrative? Like, we not only are we evil and we're liars, but we're weak on top of it. We don't even have anything to back it up. We're just evil monsters, and we're not even strong. We're just puny little weak evil. I don't know. You know what I mean? It makes me mad. This is the thought of almost 2 million people that Ukrainians that die before this is over. If we're already at that number and they're going to keep it going, like, this whole generation, you have destroyed that country. That country is gone. If they're the ones that, if you think about if that many have died, then think of how many have fled. Just what lives are these people going to have? If you're a kid there, people don't have fathers anymore. The women, how do they support their families? Their husbands are all dead. Like, it's so tragic. It's horrific. And we don't, and it's on a huge scale. I don't want to compare it to Gaza, because what's happening in Gaza is just absolutely heartbreaking and the most horrific thing, because it's intentionally murdering these people. But we're talking about huge numbers. More people have been killed in this war. And just that ripple effect, how that impacts, the people, the family members around them, their kids, future generations. Like, this is so damaging. It just, anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. I don't even have a question here.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, no, that's an important story. Yeah, we don't know yet, but we should know one way or the other, I think in the relatively near future, because this can be verified or refuted. Again, according to the hackers, they have, the names, pictures, the circumstances of death, next of kin, all of that. And if that's true, they can publish that, and the Ukrainians can show this is all phony, show, these people are all here, they're all alive, thousands of them or whatever. Inevitably there will be some mistakes. So if they find 3 guys that are alive, that doesn't prove anything, right? But they can disprove it if in fact they publish it. But if, they can't, then we know it's true. This is something that can be verified. So I don't think that the whole thing, the trove of data, has been published yet. I may be wrong, maybe it has been. But if it is published, we will learn one way or the other, whether or not this is true. The number they gave was 1,721,000. Yeah. And they broke it out by year, and it showed that there's been a real acceleration. Not, we're talking about tens of thousands of deaths in the first year, but it goes up, quite a bit in 2023. That was the year of the big, summer offensive. But then another leap forward in 2024. And this year is on pace to, maybe 1 million deaths or 900,000 deaths in this year alone. It gets worse and worse according to, the data according to their breakdown of the data. Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, this would be, I think should be a huge blow to the Ukraine project if this is verified. And we still don't know yet. I noticed that there was just a really violent emotional reaction to this story. I was just scrolling through the different Western and Ukrainian press reports, and it was just all that this has been refuted, this has been debunked, this is nonsense. The Russians, fake news by the Kremlin, this is the way it's portrayed. But I go into the article and no, they haven't refuted it. That's a word that's often misused now to say you haven't proven that it's untrue. It's just that their so-called proof or that it's untrue is that basically the Ukrainians deny it and say it's untrue, and that everybody knows that more Russians have died. It's just assertions of the previous narrative, but they don't offer any proof of it. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, that's quite a large number. The Russians themselves, the Russian Ministry of Defense has estimated that 1.08 million Ukrainians have been killed or severely wounded. So it would actually be quite a bit higher. But that's certainly possible because, again, these are estimates. I don't know how the Russians can really know how many Ukrainians are dying on the other side. They get a sense of it, of course, when they do a rapid advance and they collect the bodies, which, we've seen that happen. But in general, these lines are moving quite slowly. So they're making these estimates, but they can't really know. When you hit a concrete fortification with a fab bomb, you don't know how many guys are inside there. Sometimes maybe you pick up some sort of radio transmission, but you're not always going to get it. So we'll see. Maybe it's true. It's really a horrifying number, and if it is verified, then that should be a huge blow to the Ukraine project.
Right, especially because Trump seems to believe the inverse. He seems to believe the Ukrainian numbers. We see him retweet like, "Oh my goodness, already 1 million Russians have died this year," or whatever it is. Right. He says, just insane numbers. Only 8,000 Ukrainians have died. Right. And something like this. Right. I mean, I remember Zelensky a year ago or so, like after the summer offensive, said that there's 34,000 Ukrainians. And then you're just thinking like, if you lied by a factor of like 100, or 50 or whatever.
Well, I'm sure. Yeah, the Ukrainians just can't believe Zelensky on this, and they probably believe something closer to that number that's been revealed because you can see that from their behavior. Again, we're talking about the press gangs. You don't run from a press gang and they don't have to be chasing people down in the streets. If in fact, the numbers are as low as what Trump and Zelensky are claiming.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but it's clearly they're afraid. People do not want to go to the front in Ukraine. They don't know the exact number, I'm sure, but they've heard enough, from friends and, classmates and so on. And family members, they say, no, don't go there. It's a death sentence. And so, people swim across the rivers, they hide in their basements, they dress up as women, whatever it takes. I think the conduct, it doesn't prove exactly what the number is, but that it's high, that there is real fear within Ukraine. And that's why they're having so much trouble finding anybody to actually go to the front. And you just don't see the same thing. In spite of all these stories about, a million dead a year in Russia or whatever, there's just nothing like that. I haven't seen one forced conscription video in Russia because forced conscription doesn't happen. They're getting in more than enough people. Yeah, by offering them good packages. But again, if you think that there's a really good chance you're going to die, you're just not going to do it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's just open admissions from the Ukrainian side as well that they have a manpower shortage. This isn't hidden. And so you wonder, well, what does that mean if you have a manpower shortage? Well, it's because they're all dying. That's what it means. That's the horrible truth. And it just feels like you wish that someone like Trump could put that together. I think JD Vance understands that, but I just don't understand how somebody cannot figure that out. That I saw an article saying that Ukraine is looking into like using robots to solve its manpower shortage. It's like, well, okay, yeah, if you're going to robots, it's because you killed all the humans are dead. You know, like this is what you're saying. It's just, it's really awful. Well, it seems like it's going to continue grinding on. I don't see this. I don't believe that there's going to be any type of peace. I think this is all noise. It sounds like you feel the same way. So it's just going to continue to be a tragedy. It's going to, I think we'll probably see, more rapid advances. I imagine, and we'll just see what the U.S. does in response, I guess. But yeah, no, I don't think any peace is on the horizon. You agree, right?
Yeah, I do. I do agree.